First story. Girlfriend's man-child brother FS with OP for his PS3. Pushes him down the stairs, tries to RN him alive, ends his cat, then attacks him. Forgetting OP is a trained special officer who handed the brother's arse to him, making him use a catheter and diaper for the rest of his life. Rotting in jail locked up for 3 murder charges of his friend's OP ended. As you knew it. So a little bit about me before I go into this. And before you ask about it, I am going to be incredibly vague about a lot of specifics. If you've ever worked in cybersecurity or for the government, you'd understand why I'm cagey. I graduated from high school in the late 2000s. I tried college. It didn't work for me, so I enlisted like I had already planned to after I got an associate's. I got into the Navy, passed quals for this special warfare training block while in basic, and after completion went and started training to become a SEAL, which I did not complete because that SHT is no joke. But it's cool because I went SWCC instead and became a dirty boat guy. SWCC are the guys you see in movies arriving just in time with fast boats blasting lots of firepower at the bad guys so they can pull our boys out of hell. Sometimes they work with helo crews or man the helos themselves. Most often they just patrol riverways in Iraq begging for someone to shoot at them to break the monotony. That sounds way cooler than it really was. Aside from becoming an expert in all things small watercraft and doing a good amount of diving and aircrew SHT as well, I didn't get to do the cool SEAL SHT. There are things I did do while strapped to a SEAL team, but I don't think I can talk about that. No door kicking, no breaching, no team SHT. Only on a handful of occasions did I even get into a firefight. Side note. Most YouTube, Special Forces operators are former team or group guys who are full of SHT, and their colleagues did most of the heavy lifting. They just tell the stories from their perspective so somebody gets to tell it, without divulging identities, etc. Anyway, I got out of boat SHT 8 years and after being injured, and did my last 4 years of my 12-year career doing other stuff in special warfare, more cyber-oriented. I retired, collected my VIA card, and went to school for a couple of semesters to bone up on SHT I needed for some cybersecurity certifications, and I've been working in the private sector since early 2019. Got my own LLC and everything. So this story actually starts in early 2016. I had been back in my hometown for a while, which was near a major naval base. I had changed career tracks and was on medical leave for a bit after my injury. So I had been able to take some time to reconnect with an old high school sweetheart of mine, and we had been dating for several months. She was my best friend growing up, and I absolutely blew it when I had the opportunity to take her to junior prom. And we didn't see much of each other after we graduated and I enlisted, so we'd grown apart. And in the several years it had been since we'd parted ways and reconnected, she had had a kid of her own, an adorable little 3-year-old girl, and Daddy wasn't in the picture, which was absolutely his loss because she was a gem of a child. We grew close quickly, and after a couple of months, she'd occasionally call me Daddy, which made my heart soar. And as for her mother, I was head over heels for her years ago, and reconnecting with her only reinforced those old feelings because it took off like a rocket. We were inseparable for the first couple of months, and when we weren't going on fun playdates with her kid, or acting like horny high schoolers after we'd sent her to bed, we were texting each other at work, tagging each other in funny memes on Facebook. You know, dorky, cheesy, lovey-dovey kid SHT that's embarrassing to admit to as an adult in his 30s now. But, we were in love. Real love, something that, to that point, I'd never known like that before. I'd been shot at in St. B bed. Hell, my whole injury was due to getting my leg blasted with a 7.62. But none of that made me more nervous and scared than this new love I was feeling. I had it bad. However, there was a complication in the form of her brother, some lanky, inbred, wannabe gangster WGGA boy, whiter than driven snow, who came in and started crashing on her futon, a month and a half into our relationship. This piece of SHT had the highly unfortunate blessing of also being the kiddo's godfather uncle. He had no blood relation to my girlfriend or the child. He was just some former tweaker who worked at the Target they both worked at who started crashing from low blood sugar. He was coming down from whatever he was high on. So she got him a cheeseburger and soda, which, in the tweaker culture, is like being given a handful of gold. He was forever in her debt and became her right-hand man, never wanting her romantically as he preferred trash similar to his own kind thank you, God. She referred to him as brother, and he of her as sister, so naturally he was uncle to the little one. Which meant when he showed up in the middle of the night, midway through our relationship, it was a very bad sign for me, because that homeless, now jobless, feckless idiot was moving in. Our friendship started out on a very, suddenly bad note, because he was met by me and a .45 in his face, wondering why a grown arse man was in my girlfriend's apartment while we were in bed. And I heard something going bump. Side note for any concerned citizens. The kid was sleeping between us, and they didn't have any pets. So I knew whatever was making noise out there wasn't anyone in the room, and nobody else should have been there. Pair that with recent break-ins in her complex, and you can see why I was justifiably armed. Now I did not live there. I had my own studio near the base. I just stayed the night often because it was convenient and fun. And with the recent break-ins, they also felt safer with me there. So win/win/win. So naturally, I didn't have any say in anything regarding him living there. In an effort to placate the young whippersnapper, after holding a effing 1911 to his nose, I let him borrow my PS3 and a spare TV I had so he had something to do. Because F him if he was going to actually go out and find a job. Instead, he smoked weed out on the balcony all day and played Need for Speed and COD on my PlayStation. This F-er acted like my girlfriend was his mom. Expected her to cook him food when she got home from work. Expected her to take his laundry out and fold it for him. God, he once asked her if she could relace his shoelaces onto his sneakers because she does it better. The kid, he was 23, was a effing loser. And beyond just being a live-in babysitter for the actual child when mom and I were at work because my med leave ended eventually, he served absolutely no value. We'd come home to a messy kitchen and tht all over the apartment. Numerous times he'd leave a growler in the toilet and neglect to flush, and F him for asking my girlfriend to do his laundry because I didn't always see TP in the water when I was the one to flush it. That man had an itchy arsey hole all the time, I guarantee it. He was good with the kid, though. I will give him that. She never had a dirty diaper before she transitioned to the potty. So good on him for actually being a little useful. And it was like this for 4 more months. Eventually, I was spending so much time over there that she and I were talking about getting an apartment together, so we're not paying 2 leases. And of course dude guy was hitting us up for a spare room, which we fought and argued about because 4 months after moving in, the mother effer still had no job. The guy who talked so much game about being a successful Dr. G dealer in his late teens couldn't move legal weed. He claimed to be a professional drift car driver. But he nearly backed my car into a light pole 4 times, the handful of times I trusted him enough to park it for me. And every single time we argued or had a little spat, his choice of words was, "I'm gonna kick your arse. If I can't kick your arse myself, I have a whole bunch of friends who can and will." Now, I want to reiterate I was not a SEAL. I did not go through the rigorous combat training the Navy teaches special warfare operators and team guys. I learned enough to qualify you for special warfare. But what SEALs go through in BUDS and their supplemental training schools, their individual specialty schools, and whatever clandestine SHT the agencies and JSOC have them doing nowadays was completely missed on my career track. We drive boats, we fly in choppers, we jump out of planes. Sometimes we do a mission with a SEAL team, but most of the time it's a partner force op, or some kind of escort op in some territorial waterway we're not supposed to be in. Maybe we're pulling a few divers out of the murk, and not talking about it the rest of the way to extract, because it's one of those missions. There's a reason SEALs are also called frogmen. I was also injured. I could walk on both legs by this point, but if my painkillers weren't working well enough, or if the weather was bad, there were days I couldn't stand up straight without leaning on something. But the rest of my body was still in decent shape. I'd trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the fleet. I practiced Kali and Silat with some Filipino guys I'd met on base. They are why I love Lumpia so much. I picked up different shooting stances like center axis relock. I went to CQB shooting courses thanks to my Navy career. I wasn't Rambo. But I wasn't a effing slouch either. And I could end this FR with my bare hands. No 1911 necessary. But I loved his sister, and I wanted to marry her and adopt her child. So I bit my tongue whenever he flashed on me. Weeks went by. Every now and then, he'd snap at me for some SHT. I decided I'd had enough, and one night when I was leaving to head home, I took my PS3 and TV with me. He loved that. He declared that I was banned from the apartment, to which my girlfriend reminded him that it's her apartment and her rules, and that he needed to be respectful. Then one fateful morning, maybe a week after that, I had spent the night, and we were getting up early because I needed to be on base, and she had to go to work. So we got out the door with the kiddo, and just as we were buckling her into her car seat, I realized I had left my wallet inside. So I went back to the apartment and retrieved it. And as I was walking towards the front door, Asef Maji pipes up with, "You're cleaning those dishes when you get back." Dear audience, those dishes were dishes he had dirtied the previous night when he made late-night stoner mac and cheese and somehow needed a mixing bowl and 4 different wooden spoons to make it. I looked at them, looked at him, looked back at them, then back at him, and said, "You're high. Clean them yourself, B, and don't ever tell me what to do again." Before doing the damned best about face a man can do when low on painkillers and high on pain and salt and walking out the door. I was maybe 6 or 7 steps down their stairwell when I heard the door fly open behind me. I turned to see him coming at me with both hands, and he threw me the rest of the way down the stairs. I landed hard on my back, knocking the wind out of my body and hitting the back of my head hard on the concrete deck. My leg caught fire with fresh pain. Then he jumped on top of me, snapping me out of my daze, and I went to work on him. I grit through the pain and started working to get on top of him, where I proceeded to rain hell on his face with my fists. I split his lips, I popped him in the eyes and the temple, and I even gave his Adam's apple a nice little tap. I was effing furious, and I honestly didn't care if I unalive him in that moment. Someone had to die, and it was definitely not going to be me. But she saved his life a second time. She was wondering why it was taking so long, and when she heard the yelling, she came running and found me on top and beating the gravy out of him. She screamed for me to get off, and I did. As soon as I did, his mouth started running. "Sister," he threatened to unalive me, and he attacked me and threw me down the stairs because I asked him to bring back the PS3. Which she knew was effing bullshit, and the neighbor's security camera outside backed that up. But in that moment, she was livid, and rightfully so. I took her to work. I took the kid to daycare. I went to base. I had to explain to my why I had bloody knuckles and why I was holding a cold pack to the back of my head. They offered to call the police so I could press charges. I told them no. My damn near ordered me to call the police, or he'd put me back on med leave, which he couldn't do. Technically, to which I replied that I'd rather be on med leave than lose my girlfriend for calling the cops on her brother. It was made clear to me, in no uncertain terms, that I am a particularly stupid kind of arsehole, and that would come back to bite me in my arse someday. Well, he was right. Basically, brother gave an ultimatum. Either I leave and she dumps me, or he leaves and walks out of her and her daughter's life, which, to be fair to my ex, that loser had been the only constant male figure in her kid's life since she was born. So that would have been devastating for the gremlin, and she wanted to spare her that kind of pain. Which meant I got the axe. Honestly, I'd have rather taken an actual axe to the heart, because what I actually felt was way worse. It's one thing when you're saying goodbye to the woman you love, but to have to also say goodbye to a sobbing little kid you wanted so much in your heart to adopt and make your own. I don't want to meet the man who can hold back the tears from that SHT. That man scares me. I went back to my apartment. I put together a little box with the toys and keepsakes and clothing items they'd left behind, and waited for the right time to bring it by her work. I was a broken man. But that little effer, he wanted to kick me while I was down. "Remember those friends," he mentioned. Well, he wasn't lying. He did have some friends with rap sheets and bad intentions, and in the months that followed her and I breaking up, he put them to work. I woke up one morning to discover my car had been blocked up, the wheels taken off, my cat cut out, and they had spray-painted slurs and SW stickers on my car after busting out my windows. I wasn't Jewish, and I had been de-seeking his sister for the last 6 months. But somehow I was both a K-key and a FG. What my insurance didn't cover cost me $2,500 in repairs. Police were called, a report was made, and surveillance footage was useless, though. Faces covered. They wore gloves so no prints. And it's not like they're rolling out the CSI to collect hair follicles off the deck for auto vandalism. 2 weeks later, an attempted arson attack on my front door. Someone wearing a mask and a hoodie lit a Molotov cocktail and threw it at my front door's welcome mat. And if it weren't for the apartment's fire sprinklers actually working, my apartment would have burnt down with me in it, because I wasn't jumping from the 3rd floor balcony. That was a more serious crime. Cops were very interested in solving it, but again, no usable prints, face covered for the camera, etc. Then it was quiet for a month. My ex had reached out to me when she heard about the fire, and I told her I effing knew it was her brother, but I didn't have any proof. She said she'd say something to him, and coincidentally, nothing happened again for a while, until I guess cops came around asking to talk to him, because obviously I gave them his name as a person of interest. In the month, and some change since our spat, she basically forced him to find some kind of work, or she was going to kick him out. So he had gotten a part-time gig at an auto shop in town that had a rep for being the one you don't go to, but fine to recommend to someone you hate. They cut corners everywhere they could, so it was a perfect job for the F-Weasel, At least until the cops came looking for him one day asking about that fire. The owners didn't like having cops asking about their employees, so since he'd only been there a week or two, he got the boot. He deeply appreciated that. So, one night I'm getting home from work. I had stopped at the gym on the way, worked up a good sweat, and got a bite to eat from the grocery store. I pulled into my spot in my Enterprise rental. My car was still in the shop, and walked into my apartment. Real quick. While I was over 21 and legally owned firearms and had a concealed carry permit, on days when I was on base, I did not carry my pistol. It's incredibly rare for anyone whose explicit job description doesn't include carries a pistol at all times to be allowed to carry a weapon on base. Since I'm not leaving a pistol in my car, and there weren't any places to securely store a weapon while I was working, I just opted to not take my gun with me. It's also why I did not have a pistol on me the morning tht-askreddit jumped me. I was unarmed. I lived on the 3rd floor. There was a 4th floor above me and stairs leading to it. I heard footsteps coming down the stairs fast, and I turned to see 4 guys in hoods, masks, and wearing gloves coming towards me. My door was open, so I dropped my groceries and tried to slam the door behind me. They got a foot in and managed to wedge through into my apartment. What followed took place during a period of about 14 seconds. The neighbor across the way after the fire got a security cam installed outside their door as well, so we know the actual time stamps down to the second. I kept a loaded pistol tucked in a closet near my front door. Irresponsible, I know, but I was younger and more naive than I am now. In the scuffle with the first guy who came through the door, I managed to reach my hand into the closet, find the gun, and push myself back and away to give us several feet of space. I remember very vividly seeing all 4 men in my doorway and hallway. The first guy I had just pushed having been body blocked from falling backward, and was starting to come toward me a second time. I raised my pistol. This one was a SIG P226 chambered in .40 Smith & Wesson, and just as I heard one of them shout, "Firearm," I started lining up shots and pulling the trigger. There were no limb shots, no shooting to scare them, and I didn't try to wing them. Body, head. As I had trained, as I had been taught. The first guy went down. The second guy caught 2 of the through and throughs from the first guy before I plugged him in the forehead. The third guy stopped dead in his tracks before catching 4 center of mass, and the fourth guy was halfway out the door before I emptied the rest of my magazine into him through friend 3 and whatever I could see and aim at. You might be thinking, oops, that fourth guy was running away. That's termination. You're a K-liller. Well, the cops didn't see it that way, and the investigators didn't charge it that way. Because he lived. Now the first 3 recipients of my high-velocity sleeping pills didn't. The first guy's brains were all over the second guy, and the second guy's brains were all over my wall. The third guy's heart and both of his lungs were demolished by my .40 S&W. He was pronounced unalive on the scene. The fourth guy was my ex's brother. Of the 3 bullets that hit him, 1 grazed his arse, the other thoroughly lodged itself in his rightest cheek, and the third one hit him square in the spinal cord, right around the kidney area. Shattered his spine and completely destroyed his lucrative career in competitive breakdancing and bicycling. He was paralyzed from the navel down. Had to have a permanent catheter to catch his piss and a diaper for what was now the most useful byproduct he was capable of producing. He'd never walk again. He'd never F again. And when he was healthy enough to be discharged from the hospital, he was locked up in prison, given 3 manslaughter charges since he caught the rap for his 3 buddies getting unalive. He was also charged with conspiracy to commit murder, assault, and battery. And he even caught the reckless endangerment charges for me discharging my firearm in an apartment complex with another apartment across the hall from the open door I was shooting towards. He was never going to breathe free air again. I would like to say that this ended up happily ever after. That she took me back. That we got married and I adopted her little one. And we had a couple of spares of our own. But she didn't. Within 24 hours, she declared that she was scared of me. That she did not want me anywhere near her or her child. And that she'd call the police on me if she ever saw me near her home or her place of work, which sucked. I liked that target. She called me a K-liller. She accused me of sixing the cops on him to instigate a response, just so I could shoot him. She ignored the arson, the vandalism, and the various threats he'd thrown at me in the previous months we were together. I never saw her again. She blocked me on everything. Her family blocked me. She changed her number. She transferred to a different target. And after a couple of months, she moved to a different apartment in a different part of town. It has been 8 years since the shooting, and I still haven't heard from her. I know she's alive. Friends of friends informed me she got married in 2020, had a second kid, and is happy, so more power to her. I never got my happy ending. My white picket fence. Believe it or not, ending 3 guys. Even for a person trained for war and conditioned for the possibility that one day he might have to do it. FS with your head. Especially when you consider it happened in your home and not in Baghdad or Abbottabad. There's a huge mental and emotional disconnect and difference between ending someone for work and ending someone because your life was in danger. I had PTSD. I couldn't touch any of my firearms once I got them back for a full year without having panic attacks. The Navy was great about it all. They aided with the investigation, including that co who called me the Apex Dumbars. Giving his statement of that morning, I got jumped. I was offered the chance to live on base with protective detail until things cooled down. I declined. 8 years later. Since then I've retired. I'm now working in the private sector. I have my own LLC, making great money doing cybersecurity and site security consulting. Occasionally I go out boating. My partner of 3 years is the most loving, supportive person I've ever been with. I know they have my back no matter who tries to end me. We're talking about having kids before we get too much older. Life's good. But you know what really warmed my heart? Just the other day, a Google alert I set up 8 years ago triggered. It was Skidmark McDipsh-T's first and last name, followed by the word obituary. It turns out someone in prison got sick and tired of the annoying white boy in a wheelchair talking so much SHT and flexing on people, believing nobody would hit someone in a wheelchair. They used the wheelchair to cave his skull in and used their shoes to finish him off with a few good stomps. Of course, it doesn't say that in the obituary. It says he was a bright and lovable lad when he was young, who fell into hard times in his early adulthood and landed in prison. The real surprise is apparently he is survived by a daughter none of us knew he had back then, so sucks for her. But I doubt she ever got a chance to know her sperm donor anyway. Honestly, that's for the best. So yeah, sorry for the effing novel. But I just didn't feel like leaving out any of the details that mattered. I hope you enjoyed my story. Second story. I cheated with my best friend's wife. Now she is pregnant and forced me to come clean while abusing my best friend. So I confessed to my best friend, and he demanded a paternity test, which showed that neither of us is the father. His wife cheated on me too. I never imagined my life would come to this, sitting here, debating whether to confess to my best friend of 20 years that I've been sleeping with his wife for the past year. If I could go back and stop myself from making the first mistake, I would. I would do anything to undo the damage I've caused. But the truth is, there's no way to fix this without ruining everything. Mark and I have been best friends since we were kids. We've been through everything together: school, heartbreak, family tragedies. He's like a brother to me. When he met Sophie 5 years ago, I was genuinely happy for him. She was sharp, funny, and had this warm, down-to-earth charm that made you feel comfortable immediately. I couldn't have picked a better partner for him if I tried. At first, everything seemed perfect between them. They got married about a year after they started dating, and I watched Mark settle into married life like it was the role he was born to play. But over time, things started to change. About a year and a half ago, Mark began opening up to me about problems in their marriage. He said Sophie seemed distant, like she was pulling away from him, but he didn't know why. He figured it was just the usual ups and downs of marriage: stress, work, and routines. I didn't think much of it either. Relationships aren't perfect, right? Looking back now, I think that was where the cracks started forming, not in their marriage, but in my judgment. Sophie started talking to me too. It wasn't anything inappropriate at first. She'd vent about Mark, about how he seemed distracted, or how he wasn't as attentive as he used to be. She never said anything that outright blamed him, but you could tell she was frustrated. And I listened because, wow, what else was I supposed to do? I thought I was being a good friend to both of them, helping them work through their issues. But somewhere along the way, the lines blurred. Sophie and I started texting more often, first about random things, then about more personal topics. It felt harmless at the time, but it wasn't. The boundary I thought I was maintaining wasn't really there. I didn't notice how far things had gone until the night it finally crossed the line. It was about a year ago. Mark was out of town for work, and Sophie asked me to come over to help her move some furniture around. It felt like a completely normal favor. I'd been to their house countless times. It wasn't weird for me to be there without Mark. But that night, something shifted. We ended up sitting in the living room, talking for hours. She told me how lonely she'd been feeling, how she thought Mark had stopped seeing her the way he used to. And instead of telling her she needed to work it out with him, I told her I understood. I told her I saw her. And then, It happened. We kissed. I should have left right then and there. But I didn't. I stayed, and one mistake turned into a string of mistakes that's been going on for the past year. At first, it felt thrilling, like we were sharing something secret and forbidden. But that didn't last long. The guilt hit me fast and hard, but I kept pushing it aside. I told myself I'd end it before it got too serious. I told myself it wasn't hurting anyone as long as no one found out. Lies I fed myself to make it easier to keep doing the wrong thing. Then, 2 months ago, Sophie told me she was pregnant. That was the moment everything came crashing down. She said she was certain the baby wasn't Mark's, and I believed her because their intimacy had all but disappeared by then. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I didn't know what to say or what to do. Sophie was calm, eerily calm. She told me she wanted to keep the baby, but that we couldn't keep living like this. She said we needed to tell Mark that it was time to come clean so we could start fresh as a real couple. I don't even have the words to describe how that felt. The idea of sitting down with Mark and telling him that I'd been sleeping with his wife, that I'd gotten her pregnant, made me physically sick. Mark's been nothing but good to me, always. He trusts me completely. He's confided in me about his fears, his insecurities, and his struggles with Sophie. He's told me he feels like he's failing her as a husband. And every time he says that, it's like a knife in my gut because I know the truth. It's not him. It's me. The worst part is how hard Mark has been trying to fix things with Sophie. Over the past couple of months, he's gone out of his way to plan date nights, cook her favorite meals, and even buy her little gifts just to make her smile. And none of it works. Sophie has been colder and more distant than ever, and Mark doesn't understand why. He keeps coming to me for advice, asking what he's doing wrong, and I have to sit there and pretend like I don't know. It's killing me. Meanwhile, Sophie has been pressuring me more and more to tell him the truth. At first, she was gentle about it, saying we needed to do the right thing. But lately, she's been more forceful. She says she can't live with the guilt anymore, that it's not fair to her or the baby to keep living this lie. But I can't help wondering if it's really guilt that's driving her, or if it's something else. She's been acting differently, one moment sweet and affectionate, the next cold and demanding. It's like she's unraveling, and she's determined to drag me down with her. Last night, she gave me an ultimatum. She said I have 1 week to tell Mark, or she's going to tell him herself. She said it's not fair to keep lying to him, and honestly, she's right. But the idea of coming clean, I don't think I can do it. I can't even imagine what it would do to Mark. This is the man who's been my closest friend for 20 years, the person who's always had my back. And I betrayed him in the worst way possible. I don't know what to do. If I confess, I lose him. If Sophie tells him, I lose him. Either way, I've already lost. But the clock is ticking, and I'm running out of time to decide. Update. I wish I didn't have to come back here. I wish I could tell you that everything worked out, or that I found some magical solution to fix the disaster I created. But I promise to be honest, and here's the truth. Everything is worse than I imagined, and I've destroyed the most important relationship in my life. After posting my original story, I spent days reading your responses. A lot of you told me I needed to come clean, and you were right. The weight of what I was hiding was unbearable, and Mark, my best friend, deserved the truth, no matter how much it would hurt. I kept replaying the past year in my head, thinking about all the times Mark trusted me, confided in me, leaned on me, while I was stabbing him in the back. I couldn't live with myself anymore, so I told him. I asked Mark to meet me at my place. I told him I needed to talk to him about something serious. He showed up that evening, looking a little worried, but otherwise unsuspecting. I could barely look him in the eye as I started to speak. My hands were shaking, and I could feel my chest tightening with every word. I told him everything. I admitted that Sophie and I had been having an affair for the past year. I told him that she claimed she was pregnant, and that the baby was mine. I tried to explain how it started, how I had let things go too far, but none of it mattered. Nothing I could say would justify what I had done. When I finally looked up at him, I saw the betrayal written all over his face. He didn't yell. He didn't interrupt me. He just sat there, staring at me like I was a stranger. I'll never forget that look. It was the kind of heartbreak you can feel in the pit of your stomach. When he finally spoke, his voice was shaking. He asked me why I would do this to him. Why I didn't stop it before it got this far. I didn't have answers. I mumbled something about how I'd been weak, how I didn't mean for it to happen. But it all sounded hollow, even to me. I told him I was sorry, but he cut me off. He told me that sorry didn't mean anything anymore. Then he called Sophie. He told her to come over immediately. She must have known something was wrong because she showed up quickly. As soon as she walked in, Mark confronted her. He demanded that she tell him the truth, and when she hesitated, he turned to me and told me to say it. I couldn't, I'd already said my piece, but Sophie eventually confessed. She admitted to the affair, confirmed everything I'd said, and tried to justify it by saying she'd felt neglected in their marriage. Mark wasn't having any of it. He told her that if she had been unhappy, she could have come to him or left him. Instead, she chose to cheat with his best friend. He was shaking with anger. Then, he sat down for about 15 minutes, staring at the floor, before finally asking for a paternity test. She had the audacity to lie again, claiming she was pregnant with his baby, before I could say anything. Mark told Sophie he didn't believe her about the baby. He said if she could lie about their marriage and the affair, there was no reason to trust her about anything else. I stayed silent. I didn't blame him for doubting me or her. If I'd been in his shoes, I would have done the same thing. The next few weeks were hell. Mark didn't speak to me at all. He stopped answering my texts and calls. I don't even know if he read them. Sophie tried to reach out to both of us, but I ignored her too. I didn't want anything to do with her anymore. I couldn't handle the chaos. Then the paternity test results came back. Neither of us was the father. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or sick. Sophie had been lying to both of us. There was another man, someone else she'd been seeing behind both Mark's back and mine. She tried to explain herself, saying she'd been confused and scared, but no one was listening to her anymore. Mark completely shut her out. He filed for divorce the next day, packed her things, and kicked her out of the house. As far as I know, she's left town. Mark made it clear to everyone in our circle of friends what she'd done. She's been completely cut off by everyone, and I don't think she'll ever come back. As for me, Mark cut me out too. He didn't yell at me again or confront me after that first night. He didn't even look at me when we got the test results. He just left. He blocked my number, stopped responding to anything, and hasn't made any effort to contact me since. I haven't seen or heard from him in weeks, except through his lawyers regarding his divorce filings. Our mutual friends know what happened, and while a couple of them have tried to stay neutral, most of them have sided with Mark, and I don't blame them. I deserve it. I betrayed someone who trusted me more than anyone else in his life, and I've ruined everything. The hardest part is the silence. The fact that Mark didn't even scream at me or try to fight me after the confession hurts more than anything else. He didn't see me as worth the effort. It's like I'm dead to him now. I wish I could tell you that I've learned something profound from all this. But all I've learned is that I'm capable of destroying everything I care about. I've lost my best friend, my social circle, and any shred of self-respect I had. I'm trying to pick up the pieces and move forward, but I don't know how to live with the weight of what I've done. I'll regret this for the rest of my life. All I can do now is try to be a better person, if that's even possible. Third story. I moved into my BF's house, and I haven't been able to sleep well for 3 weeks because he doesn't let me. I had a breakdown last night and broke a lamp. I'm going to stay in a hotel tonight. I moved into my BF's house he owns 3 weeks ago, and it's been really hard. We have been fighting a lot. Many of our fights are because he doesn't let me sleep. I work 9-5, so I have to wake up at 8-ish. He works whenever he wants, so he doesn't have a set sleep schedule. I used to go to sleep at 11:30 p.m. prior to living with him. I compromised to 12:30 m, but there are nights he goes to bed at 4 m, 5 m, 6 m, or 7 m. There is a master bedroom and a guest bedroom. I was sleeping in the master, and he would go in and out, disrupting me, so I yelled at him. He tells me, "Give me 10 minutes and I'll be in bed." Hours go by, and he is still not in bed and making noises in the kitchen or living room. He told me, "You can go to sleep without me." There is a lot of noise when he comes into the master, and he says that's where all his things are, so he needs to go in and out. I tried sleeping in the guest room. It does not have a lock. But when I do so, he comes in there and disrupts my sleep instead of just going in the master. I have only been getting 6.5 hours of sleep for weeks now, very broken. Yesterday evening, I told him I have a doctor's appointment at 8 a.m. before work, so I have to be up at 6:30-ish. I got ready for bed at 10 p.m. in the guest room and was watching TV on my computer with a plan to go to sleep at 11 p.m. I put a note on the door saying, "I have to be up early. Please be considerate." I fell asleep at 11:30-ish with my eye mask on, the fan on for white noise, always use this, and a sleep podcast, and he came in 3 times while I was sleeping and woke me up. He was drunk, turned on the light, and pulled up my eye mask. I begged him every time to let me go to sleep because I have to be awake early. Then he started making a lot of noise in the hallway, saying he was having 8 strippers over, making SX noises in the bedroom. I told him, I'm leaving. I just want to sleep. Why don't you let me sleep? I was on my hands and knees on the floor crying, and he said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was just playing. I'm a jerk. I told him I needed to go get some sleep, and my plan was to just sleep in my car. It was now 1 a.m. I left, and he's calling me, telling me he is sorry, and he's in bed. Can I come back, and we can go to sleep? I come back, and he is not in bed. He is in the basement getting laundry. I said I want to go to sleep. I try to sleep again, and he then comes in and starts cuddling me, telling me he loves me and he's sorry. I ask him to come to my appointment with me tomorrow, and he agrees. I said I have to go to the bathroom. I go pee, and when I come out, he is in the bathroom. 10 minutes go by, and he's still in there. I start screaming at him to come. He says he's peeing. Then I go and open the door, and he closes it before I can get in. He tells me he's taking NyQuil. I just freaked out. I go into the bedroom and pull off everything on the dresser onto the floor. I then turned over the lamp nightstands, ended up breaking one. He pushes me onto the bed, and there is a necklace that he said he can't find. He is freaking out, and I'm scared, so I tell him I'll help him find it. We find it. It's past 2 a.m., and we go to sleep in the guest room. He is on my side, so I just go into the master and sleep there until my alarm goes off. I wake him up, and he starts getting ready, and he notices his front veneer is gone. It was there last night. He accuses me of taking it. I said I didn't. I tried to help him. But I have to go to my doctor's appointment. So I said, let's go, and I'll help you find it afterward. He says he wants to find it, so he stays. On the way there, he texts me, you don't care about me, get out and leave me alone. You are one of the most selfish individuals I met. I don't respond. Then he calls me saying he found it. I go to my appointment, get back home, and I have to work 5:30 p.m. today. IWFH. He is sleeping as I type this. I am going to get a hotel tonight and look into moving out this weekend. I feel horrible for throwing stuff on his dresser on the floor. But I can't take this constant lack of sleep, Ada. Some of OP's comments. Commenter. He's immature and reacting poorly to moving in. How old are you two? And how long have you been dating? OP, I am 32. And he is 35. We have been dating since February 2024. Commenter. WTF did I just read? Did you never sleep at his house before moving in? Are you all on drugs? This is very dysfunctional. Leave. OP, he just bought this house a month ago. I slept at his apartment before I moved in. If he didn't let me sleep, I would leave and go to my own apartment. It wasn't to this degree. If I had to work, he would come to bed by 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. at the latest. I don't have my own apartment anymore. He uses increased amounts of alcohol to sleep. Not sure about other things. I drink socially a few times per month, and I don't use any other drugs. Top comments. X_hyperballad_X. This dude is a psychopath. Regular situation 33. This SHT all sounds like a meth head. Non-by_gremlin. Get the F out and be prepared for some wild love bombing trying to get you back. You've tried to set perfectly reasonable boundaries, and he repeatedly ignores them. The man needs professional help, and you can't be that. Have a friend or relative help you pack. Don't be alone with him. Block all calls/texts. Update one same post. A few hours later. Update. Thank you to everyone for the responses, and for opening my eyes to the reality of my situation. I feel as though I have been in a daze, doubting myself and questioning my own sanity. I absolutely do not recommend not sleeping. I logged off work early, saying I wasn't feeling well. I checked into a hotel. Not the closest one, because I think he may look for my car there first. Going to sleep now. Update 2 same post. Next day. Second update. Context. This is a different relationship than my last posts. I started dating this guy in February 2024. Editor's note. OP means posts she posted months ago. He actually proposed to me at the end of May 2024 after a few months of dating with a stunning engagement ring. I said I wasn't sure because it was so soon, wore it for a day, and gave it back. I said I wanted us to know each other better and live together before that step. I accepted a contract startup position in July, with my job halfway across the country, and was gone for weeks at a time. He asked me to move into his apartment before I accepted that position. But I told him I wanted to see it though. I would come back for 1-2 weeks at a time, and we would stay together. He always stayed up later than me until 1-2 a.m., but he would put headphones in, turn off lights, and be quiet respectful when I was sleeping. It was only after I moved into his house mid-November that things escalated. He told me he wanted to put me on the deed of the house. However, I declined. There is a safe in the house where he keeps cash, probably drugs too. Maybe a gun. He was quite dodgy about answering this. He asked me if I wanted the code. I said no. I didn't want to be accused if ever anything was missing. The red flags were there, and my intuition was trying to warn me. I should have listened to it sooner. I slept for 11 hours. Yay. My parents live 5 hours away. I was planning to see them on Christmas Eve. I called and told them everything. Staying with a friend tonight. My dad offered to pick me up tomorrow, and I'll be there for a few weeks at least. I will be breaking up with my BF, but I want to be a few states away before I tell him. If he shows up at my parents' home, we're going to call the police. My dad and my brother said they'll come back with me later on to get the rest of my belongings. I don't know if I even want to go back there to get them. I just know I can't do it right now. Thank you all. OP's comment. Commenter. You are an example of what women should do in these types of situations, relationships. This guy was trying to break you, so you would do whatever he wanted. Too many women allow it to happen, though the signs are glaring. My only complaint about your post is why on earth you posted here. Do you really think you're the RC hole in this scenario? OP, I did. I felt like the RC hole at the time of this post. I have never had a situation where I barged into the bathroom while I knew someone was in there, screamed and yelled at them while banging on the door, tossed someone's belongings off their dresser, broke lamps, and damaged someone else's property ... in their house nonetheless. I have never been violent before. I know I said most nights over the past 3 weeks I was sleeping 6.5 hours. And that's true. I had realistically slept a max of 4 hours the night before I posted this. I am someone that needs 8-9 hours. Maybe that's what makes me the arsehole. But you know what? I'm okay with that. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.